All right, you want to know, okay. My full name is Sue Bowen Clements now. And my parents were Elna and Jean Bowen from Davenport. My grandparents were Silas and Mary Bell Bowen. And they were from Davenport, but originally from the Kissimmee area. So my family actually talked to Betty. So, yeah, and I didn't know until, I didn't realize till, when I talked to you a couple of 3 days ago, I always knew Betty was kin to me, and I knew that her dad and my grandmother were brother and sister. So Betty, but we were talking about Betty's grandfather, Bronson. And actually, Betty's grandfather, Bronson, is my great-grandfather, Bronson.
That's my story to tell about.
That was your story.
Before you get there.
Before I get there. Okay, well, you can tell that part of the story.
Okay.
Give her your name and whatever.
Well, actually, I'm Betty Bronson, last name Quast, funny name. It's not a Southern name, obviously. And my grandfather was from Osceola County, maybe it was Orange County, up in the between Kissimmee and Winter Garden, and owned a lot of the property where Disney is now. The Bronsons did, therefore Earl Bronson Highway up there. He was a cousin of my daddy's, but we go back to, maybe we're not telling this right now, but we go back. I was telling Sue, I said, do you know the story of your great-granddaddy Bronson? And she said, no. And I said, have you ever read the book A Land Remembered by Patrick Smith?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm one generation past A Land Remembered, literally, the way I was brought up. But my grandfather Bronson was hunting cows, looking for the cows out in the open range.
Yeah.
I don't know what year this would have been because my daddy was born in 1898. So this had to have been in the teens, 20s maybe, I don't know. But there was 6 or 8 boys of the Bronson boys, of the brothers, and they would all take, 2 of them would go out and get their cows, the Bronson cows, that were marked and branded, and bring them in to Remuda or an area where they kept them. And they do this for a week, maybe, I don't know, 2 weeks, I don't know, until they thought they had all their cows. Well, one night, Sue's great-grandfather, my grandfather, did not come in, and they went to look for him. My daddy, and I forgot one of the brothers was with him, went to look for him, and he was sitting up beside an oak tree dead. And they assumed that he had a heart attack. His dog, the cow dog, and the horse stayed with him. But I always thought that was such an interesting story that, that my grandfather, and he was in his 50s when he passed away like that, but I always thought that was a part of history that everybody didn't have that part.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting that they hunted cows on the open. And that's when we called them cow hunting, because you literally, you had to go through everybody else's cows and cut yours out that had your mark and brand.
Right.
And long before fences. But I always thought that was a neat story.
Yeah, well, Dad used to talk about, you know, them going out, and it was open range.
Yeah.
And they gathered them up around Hashney Hall, back where, close to, well, where you were living, grew up.
Yeah.
And they would drive them all the way from there to Payne's Prairie.
Oh,
and
Lord.
there was, I guess the railroad run through there then. And then, but some of our most interesting, I guess, thing that might interest, was with Betty and I were talking the other day about Hashney Hall. Well,
this is Lake Hatchney Hall. It was always just Hatchney Hall to us. So.
But it's Lake Hatchney Hall, yeah.
The property down there was about 1,400 acres, and it was just Hatchney Hall. But there, at that time, there was nothing else down there. So if you said Hatchney Hall,
that people
pretty much where we were.
Yeah, and as kids, you know, well, Betty, Betty, oh, I let Betty tell about how you lived, how you came back and forth. That's-
Well, and yeah, and that's part of my Davenport story, is that I did not actually live in Davenport.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. 5 days.
Oh, I was a snowbird before snowbirds were snowbirds. I mean, I wasn't a snowbird. I was a Polk County bird. My mama, as you remember, worked at the packing house,
Right.
the packing house on Holly Hill, but that was the packing house.
Right.
It didn't have a name other than the packing house back then. And most of our parents worked in the fruit business
Right.
or the agricultural,
So
somewhat.
all of our aunts,
Not to be ugly, but we didn't have labor brought in back then.
yeah, they
But, so,
all worked.
most of the
back in
kids
the
we went to
section.
school with either worked in agriculture or some way,
Yeah,
whether it be the fruit or the cattle or whatever. But anyway, we lived at Lake Hatchneyhall, but back then it was 10 miles of dirt road to get from Hatchneyhall to Lake Hamilton even.
right.
So there was a good chance you were going to get stuck, if you remember right, either in the mud or in the sand, going or coming. I mean, there was a 50% chance you were going to get stuck.
I remember parking at the gate and walking all the way up to your house, however far it was, because the road wasn't passable at that
So
point.
obviously the school bus, if you remember, did not come down to Hatchneyhall. So in order for Faye and I to go to school, my sister Faye, we lived the winter months and the school months with Aunt Mary and Uncle Bunk, Sue's grandmother. And then we would go down to Hatchneyhall on the weekends, and then the summer we were down there. So yeah, it was,
And the fun part was.
we were transient before we knew what transient was, yeah.
The fun part about it was that some of us kids would get to go home with Betty and Faye, and we thought that was just great, you know.
Or spend a week in the summer
Right.
with no inside plumbing and, I'm trying to think, very little refrigeration. We had no lights, so kerosene
Yeah.
lamps.
To start with, it was kerosene lamps, and the fun part was getting up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom.
Here's the flashlight, go by yourself.
And I was scared.
Oh, it was dark out there. Do you remember?
That was
No
all-
street lights. If you've never been in a place where there's no street lights and it's not full moon,
It's dark. Get Betty, wake up. Faye, I gotta go to the
no, you're on your own. Here's the flashlight.
And you get up, go outside.
Oh.
Yeah, and we would, it's funny, we would sit on the front porch and we'd play out in the yard, and there was a perpetual, what do you call them? A well, that the water.
A pitcher pump that
yeah,
it just flowed continually.
Yeah, it flowed continually
Artesian.
to, artesian well, there you go, you got it. And it had the big long trough for the horses and the cows, or whatever, I don't remember cows up there, but I remember horses and the mule
Yeah.
and all
The
that.
milk cow. Yeah.
And we loved to play in that thing.
And then we'd stir it up, and Dad would get so upset because we stirred up the water. Yeah.
Made a mess, and your mama would make taffy, and then we'd pull taffy.
Do you know what she made the taffy out of? The syrup, because we actually grew sugar cane and made syrup. Remember that old big iron pot?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And the mill that the old mule pulled it around and around that ground the
I had
cane?
pictures somewhere, I thought.
Mama's got some, I'll get them to
Yeah,
you.
because there used to be some pictures of them grinding the sugar cane. And
I
the
got
kids
those
out there
pictures.
and the mule walking around it.
So then Mama would make taffy with that syrup. You know, I think of so little money back then,
Right.
and we all had a good time.
Oh, we had a
Whether it was
ball.
making taffy out of that syrup, and you had to pull it when it was really hot
Yeah,
before it got,
oh, yeah.
and burn it.
Butter on your hands and get it up out of the dish and stretch it. I love to do it, but I didn't care about eating it.
It wasn't very good after we did it.
But it was fun.
It was fun.
It was fun.
I think of the things that we did
Yeah.
at Hatchneyhall back then for fun. In fact, I was telling you that the conservation corridor or whatever just interviewed me, and they said, "What did you do for fun at Hatchneyhall back then?" I said, I don't know, but we stayed busy all day long. I mean, I said, we used to climb sapling pine trees, and you had to pick just the right size. And you climbed it up, and then you let go with your feet and fell over, and then you climbed the tree again and did the same thing.
Right.
But it didn't, we had no toys to speak up.
Yeah.
Can you
And go blue, what was it, huckleberries that we picked?
pick the wild huckleberries and wild blueberries and blackberries that we
Yeah.
picked?
Yeah.
All wild, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Now at your house, Sue was the rich one, Sue's family was. So Sue had toys. She had bicycles and wagons and all kind of nice things. But she also had a clay pit on the property there that we spent many hours in that clay pit. And I remember the mothers getting so upset because all they had for a washing machine was those things outside that
Right.
you ran the thing, closed through the wringer, through tub after tub after tub.
And you
Yeah.
had that red clay all over. Because you could find the right heels and you could slide down.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh,
Slide
yeah.
down. Yeah.
That was our slide, because we didn't have play parks like city kids had. I mean, you couldn't.
No.
I always envied the city kids because they could go to the swimming pool and they could go to the play parks and they could do all these things. And all I had was Saturnine on. I look back now and I think, well, are you blessed or not? But it took me a lot of years to come to that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a whole different time.
And of course, when Betty and Faye were living at Grandma's, that was only maybe a half a mile from us, if it was that far, quarter of a mile. It was down the dirt road.
Down the hill.
Down a hill, down a hill, down the dirt road. And we all had to catch the bus, and Mother took us sometimes out to the road in the mornings, and we had to walk it every afternoon we walked home from school.
I never thought about something may happen to us.
No.
Oh, for crying out loud, we never locked the door. Locking the door was latching the screen door so that it didn't fly open in the middle of the night. And that was locking the doors.
And you didn't have air conditioning, so you left the door open so the air could come through the screen.
And do you remember them coming through with those spray gun? And here today, God forbid you eat something or it's going to kill you. And I'm thinking, no, I lived 20 years of my life probably with DDT getting sprayed all over me or whatever it was. So no, I don't think that's going to kill me now.
Sprayed around the screen door so the mosquitoes wouldn't come in.
Oh no, they'd spray in the bedroom and you pull the sheet up over your head. Oh no, I remember smelling that Gulf oil or Gulf spray. I remember, and that spray gun that sprayed. Oh no, it wasn't just spraying it around the door. It was.
Oh goodness.
Now I think of the things that I did, but obviously my mom and dad relocated from Winter Garden, and I'm not sure exactly why. I think because Aunt Mary was down here and because Daddy stayed down there and ran the property and took care of the cows down there.
Yeah, down Hatch.
Yeah, so that's why they relocated down here. But my original family, Daddy's family, was from South Carolina. Did you know that?
No.
Well, and Mama's family was from Gardai, Georgia, and they actually came from Gardai to Winter Garden with an ox team and a wagon. And but I used to hear stories about this. And the girls, and there were two girls and the mama, and they rode in the wagon, and all the boys, Grandpa Boston and all the boys walked alongside the team of oxen to get down here. Can you imagine how long that must have taken?
A long time, several days.
Yeah, well, you know. I don't think there's a Hampton Inn along the way either.
No, there wasn't. There wasn't anything.
I can't even imagine just deciding one day if I think I'm going to take the family to Florida to live.
And it's that far and that hard a trip. But a lot of them did.
Yeah.
Did.
And there had to have been a reason. Maybe he had a sister or something. I know there was a sister in Sanford that I remember visiting, and so maybe she was already here. But remember, the only form of communication was letters.
Right.
I was telling my kids the other day, one of my daughters, that we had no lights, so no electricity, so we sure didn't have a telephone. I mean, that was a real luxury. And Amy said, "What? How did you know somebody was coming?" I said, "No, we didn't get a text, Amy. Actually, they wrote a letter and said, if it's convenient, we're planning to come down July the 25th or whatever." And you'd write back, "Oh, that'd be great. We'd be happy to see you."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I said, so all the correspondence was written in letters.
Yeah. We didn't have telephones still. I don't remember.
And then when you got them at Aunt Mary's and your house, we were on the party line with 8 other people. And so if you picked up real quiet, you could listen to all the gossip.
Yes, you pick up the phone and you want to call somebody, and you had, like you said, you had to be careful. And then while you were having your conversation, you might hear somebody else talking. Or if you picked up the phone when they first came out there, you pick up the phone as a kid and you'd be listening, and Grandma would say, "All right, I don't know who's on the phone, but please get off the phone." It was hilarious because there was 4. There was us and Aunt Cassie and Aunt Bert and Uncle George and Grandma and Grandpa. Well, there was 4 on that line to start with. And
I
then,
thought there was more than that.
then when I got married and moved to town, we lived up
Town being Devonport.
Town being Devonport, right. The big town is Devonport. We moved, whenever Larry and I got married, of course, he built our house right after we got married. They started it. We got married in January and moved in January of '60. We got married in January of '59 and moved in January of '60.
We don't need to be talking about years.
You go tell how old we are. And we were on a 2-party line then.
Whoa, we moved uptown.
Yeah, but I had Sadie Wiley.
She had nothing to do all day long but sit and talk.
Oh my, it was something else. But that it wasn't long. It took a couple of years or so, and then we had individual lines.
It just occurred to me, kids today don't even know what it means when the line's busy, does it? I bet they've never heard a busy signal in their life. I mean, I'm thinking, have my kids ever heard of busy signal?
Yeah, well, you remember too. We were looking at pictures earlier about all the family getting together, like Easter with all the cousins and birthday parties and all that. And I don't know, somehow or other they don't do that like we did, Of course, they have other stuff for entertainment and see each other,
Yeah, we're lucky to get them put their phone down when it is Thanksgiving.
Right.
Have Thanksgiving dinner, much less, like you said, go to Grandma's house for the day. I can imagine saying, "Why don't y'all come spend the day at my house?"
Yeah.
Okay, we can swim in the pool for 15 minutes, and then after that, what are we going to do? Well, we could play cards. Cards? Play cards? Oh yeah, I got my phone, we can play cards. No, that's not what I meant. Oh yeah. Some of these things, it's a shame that we've given up, like family time,
Right.
Sunday afternoon or Sunday's get together. Other things, I'm mighty thankful that we've come this far.
Oh, yeah. We grew up with family right close to us. I miss that with my kids being spread out all over everywhere. And you understand, but you still miss that family because we only lived, like I said, quarter of a mile, half a mile to Granny Bowen's. And, we'd go down there, Danny and I get to go down there, we'd walk down to Granny's, and she had that pie safe. She always kept biscuits.
I was going to say there was always something to eat, wasn't there? It might have been a biscuit that you stuck a finger in a hole and put syrup or honey or jelly down in it.
Yeah. And I still have Grandpa's syrup pitcher that sat on the table. Grandpa Bowen.
Oh, wow.
I have it there at the house. I have it. Daddy said that's how come his teeth were bad.
From all the syrup.
all the syrup that he ate.
That was all we had for
Syrup and
dessert.
biscuits.
That was all we had for dessert.
Right.
But the highlight, you remember, was when Devonport refurbish the pool that I guess was built by the CCC or the WPA or whatever. And it sat there for years. I remember this big hole in the ground, concrete hole in the ground with no water in it. And I don't know what year that they redid that. 55? Oh my gosh. Well, people didn't have swimming pools at their house.
Oh, no.
I can't even think of them.
You went to Lucy Lake, you didn't need a swimming pool.
That's right, with the gators out there. We swim in Hatchmeow Lake.
Oh, we swim in Hatchmeow.
In fact, the kids love the story. I said, Amy, they'll say once in a while, well, how'd you take a bath? Well, we grabbed a bar of ivory soap and went down to Lake Hatchmeow and
Took a bath.
I don't even know if they make ivory soap because they laugh at me. And I said, well, you had to have ivory because it floated.
Yeah, they still do.
Oh, okay, it floated. And I said, so you got your bar of ivory. Now, if you were at the house, you didn't use the ivory soap. You made the homemade soap you used the homemade soap that Mama and Aunt Mary used to make. But if you you kept that bar of ivory to go down to the lake to take a bath. And you washed in that muddy lake. And went out.
What kind of bath?
And I remember the gator eyes being out there. Downey never went in, so he had watched the gators out there. And they never came near us that I remember.
The one thing I remember about Hatchmeow Lake is you had to walk forever.
Oh yeah, it was
It
shallow.
was so shallow. And it'd go forever, and then of course you could get in deep enough that you could swim.
Until they liked it, I think the deepest part of the lake was supposed to be 8 feet, and that was very little.
So that's great.
And I remember when I was a kid, we had black bear from time to time. We had red fox. They usually got killed because they get the chicken out. We didn't think about things back then. I mean, it was everybody for your own self, and we needed chicken. I don't ever remember killing a bear, but I remember there were bears on the property from time to time. And Daddy would say, oh, look at that, that old bear's been running around here. And I'd think, well, maybe we need to just get out of here then. And I don't ever remember a panther. Maybe there were, maybe it was over at Norton's, but I don't remember a panther. And then of course the big hard-shelled turtles, the gophers we called them. I know gophers are a furry little animal that live up north, but we call these gophers.
Right.
And do you remember we used to ride on them, the big ones?
Yeah.
Talk about being entertained easily.
Right.
Get up on the back of a gopher and go for a ride.
Yep.
So
Many times.
So we had those. Yeah, and the Laughlin kids, remember, they had like a 2-room schoolhouse or something, but they came to Devonport.
They closed it.
They closed it and everybody came to Devonport. And then the Devonport kids had to go to Haines City for high school.
Yeah.
Wow, so much has changed.
Yes,
too.
my mother used to ride her bicycle to Haines City High School to go to high school. My dad didn't ever go to the high school. But mother,
He was too smart.
yeah. He didn't care much about school anyway, but mother rode her bicycle. And they lived, all between here and Laughlin. So it was
It was a long way for her to ride.
Yeah,
It was a long way.
she could ride. Well, I say too, I think at one point maybe they finally got enough of the kids that they were busing them or transporting them some way. But yeah, she
Maybe
rode
from
her
Devonport School or
bicycle.
something.
Yeah, but yes, and goodness gracious, it was something else.
That would have been the equivalent of 5 miles uphill and 5 feet of snow or something.
Yeah.
Your mom rode the bicycle.
The sand, the dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it was. But I think some of the biggest things about, with growing up, and the thing I miss the most, and of course that goes with age, is the get-togethers with everybody. All the cousins. Dad had the bigger family, and we always were down at Rainbow with all of us, with you all and all of we were also near the same age.
Yeah.
And we had at Easter, at Christmas, 4th of July. No, it wasn't. It was Christmas Eve that they used to get the fireworks, which was But a couple of the uncles drove long distance
Trucks.
and they would bring the fireworks in. And Christmas Eve was a big deal. You came up to Davenport to the Christmas tree. then Santa Claus came on
And the fire truck.
truck.
And threw out candy, hard candy.
Yes, got the hard, you got the bag with the hard candy and whatever, and then
Then we
we
went
go to
for
grandma's.
fireworks.
We go to grandma's and stay and have fireworks and whatever out there, so, yeah, I think that's stuff that we miss, you know, I don't know. it's just
And
something.
actually, I think our kids miss that. I know that my nephew Keith's daughter, Abby, we were talking about the old days and how we used to all pile in a van and go to the mountains. And there might have been 15 of us in that van, Martha and her kids, and Faye and her kids, and me and my 2 daughters. And I said, and Mama. And off we'd go to Glenda's house and then to go to the mountains. And Abby said one time, we're talking about all the fun and the things that happen along the way, me getting stopped by the cop. And Sean thinking that, is he going to frisk her? Is he going to frisk her to see she's got a gun? She could have a knife in her pocket. And he's looking out the back window the whole time. The cops got me back there talking to me and telling me to slow down. And anyway, Abby says, why didn't we ever do anything like that? And I'm thinking, well, because we didn't have that much money that we all could take 8 cars or 3 cars or whatever, so we all piled together and
Yeah.
went someplace. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was even after what you're talking about, but you're right, we just don't get together anymore.
About the Christmas tree, I have the picture of the very first Christmas tree.
You do
It was in
not.
the park. I do. I found all this at Florida Southern College, believe it or not, when I was doing research. And it's massive number of people. And the Santa Claus is standing in the back. You don't
Yeah.
really see him to begin with. And of course there's no lights. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
the tree, you know. But it would be the first one that's early 1920s.
Wow.
So,
Oh,
yeah,
my
so
goodness.
it's really cool.
I
It's
didn't
cool.
realize that the Christmas tree thing went back so far.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it
I didn't
did.
either, but remember, it was a really big thing. I mean, it wasn't like the stores and whatnot that everybody's got a
No.
Santa Claus anymore.
No, no.
And
I mean, Santa Claus starts in October anymore over there. I mean,
And they had big ornaments, like things they had made, like fans and stuff that had been made. It's really a cool picture. Do I recognize anybody in it?
no.
Haven't found anybody yet that I know, but
We, you know, and it's funny because we all did, you know, well, Ann and Glenda and Ronnie, all the cousins, and you all, grew up, we all grew up right here in Davenport. We all went to Davenport School, you know.
Went to Haines City High School.
And the Haines City High School, and we all rode the bus, most of us. Ann was lucky enough, she didn't have to, she got to school however her mom brought her or whatever. I think Aunt Sis must have worked in the.
That was elementary school.
That was elementary school. Yeah, and you went through,
Oh,
ninth
yeah, I've
grade.
spent half my life on a school bus.
Oh, yeah. Yes, because it went from here down 1792 all the way to Loffman.
And then came back to Old
Then it
Brook.
came back. We were some of the last kids to get off. I don't remember Glenda, who lived, you know, up toward town. I guess she and Ronnie rode the bus most of the time. Do you remember? I don't. It's funny. I can remember a lot of the kids from Lockman and from.
Yeah, me too, but I don't remember Glenda and Ronnie being on the bus.
I don't either. I guess Ann Ozella took them. I don't know, but yeah, the bus ride was. Well, but the only thing was if there was anything after school, only was I in the Brownies because
Oh, yeah.
Mother was one of the leaders.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know, you didn't get to stay in town. Mama worked, you know, so we didn't get to stay.
Yeah, we
and
went too
especially
far out
like-
to just run back into town to pick Betty up.
Right. And it was like, but we went through ninth grade and
Davenport.
and then, you know, going to church, you got to know most of the kids too. That,
Oh, remember, there was the Baptist church in Davenport here and the Methodist church. And those Methodists were the bad ones because those Baptists didn't go to the movie on Sunday. They didn't do nothing, but the Methodists could dance and party. Oh, yeah, they were the bad ones.
oh, goodness, yes.
Because we only had 2 churches, didn't we?
Yeah,
That I
as
remember.
far as I was
Yeah.
remember, I don't think there might have been another.
I bet those Baptist kids wish they were
Yeah.
Methodists. thinking back.
Right.
Some of them stayed Baptist.
And we went to both Bible schools, the Methodist Bible School and the Baptist Bible School.
Went to both, yeah. No, I was married in the First Baptist Church.
Oh, I know you were, because you tripped
Yeah.
coming down the aisle.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and that was so funny. I was going.
Looking back, I'm thankful he didn't fall over the dress, the gown too. He
You
didn't
know what
trip too.
I started out, actually, they turned us around and announced us as man and wife, and I had a bouquet in one hand and the other arm through his, and I had this big hoop skirt on, and a big hoop underneath my wedding dress, and our church angled up or down, according to which way you were going, but this way it was up. I took one step and I caught the front of that hoop with my foot, and I'm going like this, and I have, and so then I got stood up, and I went to take another step, and I tripped, and before I knew what was happening, Larry just reached down and grabbed me up and took me right to, I turned red as a beet. I'm sure I was so scared that hook was going to fly up over my head. I just knew it would. I just couldn't imagine that it wouldn't, but it didn't. And I'll never forget Luella Parsons, what's her name?
Sumner,
The
her last
flower
name
lady.
Sumner.
Summer.
Yeah.
She had done the flowers and directed our wedding. And she said she had never seen anything like that happen. And, it was great, but it left us as one hill, but that was something, yeah. Then we've lived here in Davenport. We were married 66 years this past January. Can't believe that. And we've lived here the whole time, on the same block, in the same house, that, and raised 3 kids over there, and now we have
How many grandchildren do you have?
5. Patty had 3, and Randy had 2, and Bill never married, our oldest one. Billy never married. So, and now they're spread out, North Carolina, South Carolina, Iowa, North Florida, and they're all over. That's what I think I miss, that, not having them. When Patty lived here, our daughter lived here, but hers grew up, I guess they were teenagers when they really moved to Gainesville. Other than that, then Randy moved to Iowa with 2 of them, so they didn't grow up like we did.
Exactly.
Having all the cousins and things close beside and everything. But yeah, and then of course Mother and Daddy lived here all their married life. They did move to Haines City and lived over there. They were married 72 years, I believe it was, that they had been married when my dad passed away. So, and one of the treats, thinking about family, was most of Dad's family lived close around. And of course, like we talked about, the cousins all coming out to Grandma's for any kind of celebration. Anytime we could get an excuse to get together.
Exactly.
But then we had the one aunt, Aunt Laura, Daddy's youngest sister, lived in Ohio. And oh my goodness, when Christmas came and Aunt Laura was coming, everybody was excited. She brought gifts. She never had any children. And she brought gifts for everybody. And then one year...
Nice gifts too, Sue.
Yeah.
She had money.
Right. Yeah, she was the one that had money. She moved away. She did. She worked at Cypress Gardens skiing at
Yes.
one time.
She was in that movie with Esther Williams.
Uh-huh. Yeah, Easy to Love. Easy to Love. She's one of the skiers, one of the...
She was our movie star, Ann.
She was our movie star.
I think the only one we ever had in the movies.
Right. And see, that's what's so funny is with our connection with the families is they were all aunts and uncles to you.
Even though they were actual cousins.
Yeah,
like your dad was my
cousins,
cousin.
but they were cousins, but they were all, because of the age difference and everything. It was strange.
Wow.
But yeah, that was But yeah, and we have the one we finally had a great grandbaby.
Oh,
He is 10 months old, and I begin to think what gonna have him. Patty's children, two of them had gotten married. Lance has been married 4 or 5 years. But they all went to college, all went to school.
oh yeah.
And then spread out. Yeah, and you can understand, whenever
Oh,
we
yeah.
grew up, there was work here, there was, people.
Well, I was telling people also that some of my classmates in Haines City when we graduated, but there's only 103, 108, something like that. I don't know. Not many.
Right.
But our options of going to college, at that time, South Florida had just opened, but until then it was Gainesville or Tallahassee. That was a long way back then. It wasn't like the interstate today, where we just zip up to a ball game to Gainesville and come back. That was a long way from home, so college was not a norm. So I have 2 daughters, Amy and Tracy, and Amy, they both went to the University of Florida. Tracy went up to Washington, D.C. and got her master's at American and found a guy from Connecticut and married him and stayed up there. And she is still in the D.C. area in Reston, Virginia. But
How many kids did Tracy have?
Tracy has 3. The oldest one is 25. He was born in 2000, so I can always keep up with Chase's age, thank goodness. And then Anna's 2 years younger, and she just graduated college last spring. And then the last one, Alexa, is Mackie's age, 17, be 18 soon, and graduating high school this year, and both going off to college.
Oh,
So
my goodness.
we're excited for that. All of a sudden, there's a lot of graduation presents that Grandma Betty's thinking about. Oh, goodness. So, yeah, and of course I have no grandchildren, no great-grandchildren yet. But Tracy has always lived up in the D.C. area, and whereas I see the kids probably 4 times a year, I've never been as close. Roger and I retired to Tennessee for 12 and a half years. Roger passed away 2 years after we got up there, and everybody thought I'd come back home. But I had a lot of friends, and I stayed up another 10 years after he passed away. And then it got time, and I had a big house on the golf course, and I couldn't keep it. Finally, I had to admit that I could no longer keep up this house and this yard. It took me a long time. But I finally admitted that and sold that and moved down close to Amy, down close to Dunedin. So I have enjoyed Mackie and being with Mackie. So I've been down for 6 years now. So I've been down since he's 11 years old. So I've thoroughly enjoyed having Mac in my life, because until then I lived in Tennessee, and Amy and that family lived in Florida, and Tracy lived up in Virginia. So I was halfway between them. I did get to see them often, but I didn't get to live with them like I get to live with Mac, or close enough that I can live. The beautiful thing, because we keep talking about going to Granny Bowen's house and whatnot on Sunday, the beautiful thing is Amy Elizabeth has a nice size house on the water in Dunedin. So everybody goes to Amy's house, and Grandma Betty, when she gets tired, says, Grandma Betty's going home. I'll see you guys in the morning. Bye. And I get to go home.
Well,
so I'm thinking, whereas this might have been good for these older people, I'm thinking back, they would never have said anything, but I bet they were darn tired by the time everybody got through being there all day long. So I'm thinking how fortunate that Grandma Betty gets in the car and says, see you guys, bye.
Yeah, well, Faye's family lives, most of them live fairly close. Well, not real close, but they're in, Lake Wales?
Lake Wales, except for Mark, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my sister Faye was 2 years older than me. She passed away in 08. And yeah, and so I'm mom to her boys.
Yeah.
So I'm the nearest thing they have to a mother.
Yeah.
They have no relatives on the Thompson side living, so yeah, so they come over to see Aunt Betty.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew you were real close to all of Faye's
I
family.
am, so I'm blessed there. And they usually spend the night, but at least they don't all come at one time. Like when Tracy comes with the 3 kids to Amy's house, and then there's 3 of them, and then me, that's a house full. And that's when, after so long, I'm thinking, you've lived by yourself with 2 cats for too long, Betty. You're used to it being quiet. Get in the car and go home. Those cats don't make, even though I think they make a lot of noise, they don't make noise compared to this. Yeah.
You got all those kids,
Yeah,
yeah, that's funny
yeah.
enough.
So,
Time slips by, for sure.
And I'm blessed. I'm 80 years old and still in good health. I take no medications, so, and take off. So, but I said we were raised to be independent. There wasn't no. I often tell. I look at the kids today, and I look at these helicopter moms, and I'm thinking, no, we didn't go through anything like that. It was, well, if something's not broken, get over it. You'll get well after a while. and I was telling my doctor, because I've had some mobility issues, torn meniscus and an Achilles tendon. I said, now let me tell you something. If I was a kid at home, we'd rub some turpentine on it and it'd get better. And it didn't get better, or you better get better, because there wasn't no going to the doctor. I said, I often think of the home remedies we had. It's a wonder we didn't die. It truly is. Turpentine was good for everything. And then, I know this is going to be a shocker, but the other thing was kerosene. Oh, you soaked your foot, if you stepped on a nail or something, you soaked your foot in a pan of kerosene. I have no idea what that kerosene was supposed to do. But I do remember all these home remedies.
Yeah.
And I remember having a cold and getting rubbed down with mentholatum or Vicks Sad.
And the big sad.
Oh, nasty stuff. You'd do just about anything to admit that you were really sick, because you knew what was coming, all that greasy stuff all over you, and the flannel cloth that they'd wrap you in. Vicks Sad,
Yep.
I'm not sure we didn't even eat some of it. I can't remember, but I know that they rubbed it all up your nose, all over your eyes. You're tearing up, and you can't rub your eyes, because if you got any of that stuff in your eyes, it was
burning.
It was not the easiest childhood we had. And I can't ever remember going to the doctor many times. Number one, did we even have a doctor here in Davenport when we were young?
I don't think so.
And we had old Dr. Klein in Haines City, and he was old then.
Yeah, I don't remember, goodness gracious, it's been.
Yeah, but that's why we're all still healthy.
Probably because we had to make the way. Exactly. We had. Well, I tell people, and this is the honest to God truth, my daughter and son-in-law just bought 80 acres up in Citrus County, north of Brooksville. My son-in-law was born and raised in Clearwater, so he calls this 80 acres the ranch, and I'm thinking, you got 16 head of cows, Gary, and you're Mr. Dutton now. But anyway, whatever, if Gary wants it to be the ranch, that's fine with me. But we often talk about, I said, I was up this summer and we do mark the cows, we don't brand them anymore, and working the cows and giving them the Avomex and whatnot. And I said, and then they sprayed them. And I said, now when I was a kid, we had a dipping vat. We didn't have no sprayer, fancy sprayer. And I said, my job from the time I was young, maybe 8, maybe younger, was to sit on a board across the dipping vat and poke the cows through with a pole and make them keep swimming through the dipping vat, and they came up the other side. Well, the dipping vat was full of DDT, so the cows would jump in, the DDT pads splashed all over me, and I said, today, people would say, oh my God, you're going to have cancer, and I'm thinking, well, maybe so, but I hadn't in 80 years, so we'll wait and see. But I said, there wasn't a thing thought about it. And then the next day you get up and put on those same clothes, because I already had DDT all over them. And you sit there poking the cows through again. I did that for, I don't know, till I was old enough to catch the calves and throw them. But, so I did that till when I was 12 years old, 10, 12 years old, sat and poked the cows through DDT. And then between that and the spray gun to get rid of the mosquitoes, it's a wonder any of us are alive today.
Betty, you're well preserved.
Exactly right. For more than one reason.
DDT.
Exactly right. You are exactly right.
We all,
I built up those antibodies early in my life, didn't I? If I didn't die young, I was gonna live, right? And that was about their, I don't think they literally looked at it like that, but I think that was kind of the way things are. Get over it.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Faye's boys just love to say. In fact, Keith was telling the story this weekend, because Faye and I just about raised our kids the way we were raised, and get over it, go on. And there's nothing wrong with you. If you're not running a fever, you're going to school. So, you know, the fever, the thermometer went in their mouth, and if they didn't have a fever, I don't care how sick you are, I don't care how bad you look. Get your clothes on, you're going to school. So Keith was going over about Scott broke his arm, and said, it was like in the afternoon, and he fell out of a tree, and said, all Mama could say was, what were you doing up in the tree to begin with? And I'm thinking, yeah, I can relate to that. And then it was, oh, Scott, for God's sakes, it's not hurting that bad. Oh, it is, Mom, my shoulder is really hurting. So Keith says, so we went ahead and had dinner, and Scott's still crying, and his shoulder, and funny, said, Larry says, well, I guess I'll take him up to the hospital. And sure enough, his arm was broken like 3 places. I said, yeah, I can understand that. And I said, now, one of my grandchildren gets the sniffles, and I think I better get them right on to the doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I better get them to a neurologist. Their nose is running for crying out loud. So, yeah, we've come a long way. We're lucky to be here.
Definitely.
I sometimes think, if you'll think, Sue, and sometimes my kids will ask me, but I don't get around to doing it, but they do. And I start thinking, well, you know, number one, we really didn't have dependable cars, because if a car got 40,000 miles on it, it was shot.
Yeah.
Maybe not even 40. I mean, and cars were what broke down on the side of the road all the time. You seldom ever see a car broke down on the side of the road. But the telephone, the electricity, indoor plumbing, kitchens with granite countertops, things like this. I'm thinking how far we've come.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think how far my kids are going. How much more is this that they can do? I mean, this is just about as good as it can get right now. And I'm small.
I guess
thinking,
some of the funnest thing at times, of course, too, was, you know, if you, like you said, you bathed in the lake, but those big wash tubs, those big wash tubs, we took baths all the time in
Oh,
the big
yeah.
wash tubs, you
Not
know.
free wash.
I mean,
oh,
you
yeah.
know, it was something else whenever you got a bathtub that you could,
Yeah, yeah.
it was,
A bathtub you could actually run hot water in.
hot water was that was unheard of. You put your pot of water on the stove and you heated it.
And when that water got cold, you got out before the water got cold.
Yeah.
I've been so fortunate. I've been in the travel business for about 46 years now, and I'm still taking out groups. I do a little bit of independent travel for special people, but I still take out groups. And about 5-6 years ago, my nephew Mark was with me. And there's a picture of me and him standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, and he says, Aunt Betty, did you ever think either one of us would ever be standing in front of the Eiffel Tower? I said, Mark, it was so far beyond my imagination, it just never even occurred to me. It never occurred to me I'd go across the Atlantic Ocean or across the Pacific Ocean, much less see any of this.
Right.
I said, now in his mind, because he's a generation after me, in his mind, he just never imagined it. I never thought of it. I mean, it wasn't that I didn't imagine it. It wasn't even a thought.
Yeah, traveling was, like I said, that was a big deal for us to go from here to
Oh,
Ohio.
yeah. I often think about that in an unair-conditioned car in the summer.
And we went on up to
I wouldn't drive to downtown Clearwater without air conditioning in my car.
We didn't have air conditioning, roll the window down. Yeah. But we went on up, I guess I must have been about 10, Daniel was probably about 5, and we went on up, went to Niagara Falls.
They were the rich part of the family.
Oh, but the nice thing was, we lived on the ranch, and of course, he supplied a place to live, but we
And
didn't have to pay the.
Oh, I tell people the other thing, and you probably can identify with this. I said, I used to hear people oh, these are some funny stories now. I used to hear people talk about steak, and they were going, well, we didn't have many restaurants back then, but as the years went through, they were going to this steakhouse, and they have the best steak, and I'm thinking, why the heck would anybody go out to eat and get a steak? It's beyond my imagination. Because just like you, we butchered a cow. Now, the steak that I had was often a T-bone in a frying pan, and then it's turned over to fry it on the other side. And by the time we ate it, that stuff was like shoe leather. But so steak wasn't my favorite thing. Something made in a pot that had some gravy, maybe. But so I remember thinking, why would anybody want to go eat a steak?
People raised gardens back then.
Oh yeah, we had like a big garden and camp.
You can.
I was telling somebody the other day on the back porch that was not finished inside, you know, the 2x4s. I said, we had jars of beans and tomatoes and God knows whatever was out of the garden.
Yeah.
All those jars around the back porch there, and you went and got a jar of beans and you opened them and you put some bacon, fat bacon in them and cooked them. That's another thing, we ate all that fat bacon and whatnot. So I remember eating pink ham, and I remember thinking that's the best stuff I've ever had in my life. When we used to go to church and have dinner on the grounds and people would bring pink ham, cured ham, because I never had cured ham, I had ham.
Right.
What I think Mom and Dad tried to tell me was ham. But all that was a part of the pig. I mean, that's just pork, but it wasn't pink ham. I remember thinking that's the best stuff I ever had.
Yeah, you're right, because and even after I was married, and Daddy killed a steer. He would bring up one and feed it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And we never bought beef.
Oh no.
He butchered and put it out in the freezer.
So now they have range-fed cows, and I'm thinking, no, I ate a bunch of that in my lifetime. I don't need no more of that. Thank you very much. Then they're done that. So the other funny story I have is after high school, I went to work at State Farm Insurance, and I'm a country girl, and I'm trying to, and all these city girls are sitting around. Believe it or not, I'd be quiet because I didn't know what they were talking about half the time. So this couple of girls are saying, yeah, I know where we can go riding, and it's only $5 for half a day or something. I'm thinking, riding what? Oh, really? Well, that's a good deal. I don't know, they talked back and forth a while, and finally one of them said something about, are the horses old nags or something? And I'm thinking, they're paying $5 to go ride a horse? We got a gold mine, Daddy, and we don't even know it. And I'm thinking of the hours that I'd spent in the summer, winter, whatever, riding fence lines to make sure that the fence was still up, that the cows hadn't broke it, that they weren't getting out into another pasture or getting on the road. Daddy would take one side, I'd take one side, and we'd meet in the center, and then we'd go to another pasture. August in Florida. July. And nothing more boring than poking along on a horse. Just riding along a fence line, and I'm thinking, and somebody pay us $5 and put them on a horse, put them around the fence line, we got this made. I never sold it, but I thought it was a great deal.
So that's a good idea.
I had no idea people would pay money to ride a horse.
Oh, well, you know, it's, we had the horses too, and it was like Carolyn Rogers, and but particularly Carol. She would want to come home with me every weekend,
So
and all she did, so she'd ride the horse.
Yeah.
I rode them, but I didn't kill. I was not I never was.
I was going to say, we worked on horses.
Yeah.
I worked on horses, so no, to get out and ride a horse.
I just never was, but she'd want to come home with me all the time so she could ride the horse and ride the horses. I had horses from Shetland ponies.
Oh yeah.
But, well, I was on the back of a horse by the time I could sit up.
Oh yeah.
And then we rode them, but I never really, now Danny worked, my brother Danny, he worked the cattle.
Well, I was the boy,
Yeah.
because there wasn't a boy in
Well,
there.
Faye didn't ride like you. No.
There wasn't a boy. I was the boy, and Faye helped Mom in the kitchen
Yeah.
can.
And I didn't ride like that. I rode for pleasure, or if we were doing whatever, but I never rode to help them any, but Danny did. And,
Yeah.
of course, when Mother and Daddy moved to Haines City, Daddy kept the cows, and then my Billy, Never thought of it when we were kids, but then he got into FFA and
I
was,
was telling Amy Elizabeth the other day, I said, one day you're gonna want to hear from what
That's
I have to
exactly
say.
right.
I said, because I can think back, gosh, I wish I'd asked about that. Mom and Faye used to make, and maybe you got a recipe, the best pickled beets. Now, I'm not a beet eater, but I like the pickled beets. And I get them out of the jar, but they're not as good as Mom and Faye used to make. And I never made them. I always ate what they made. I still can tomatoes. In fact, Keith was just reminding me, Aunt Betty, I said, I got news for you. I only got 8 jars of tomatoes left. And Keith says, well, we'll only take 6. And I said, no, you won't take any. Now, we have gotten richer through the years, so we do buy tomatoes already picked. We don't go picking them. Oh, I got a funny story to tell you. This is not history, other than I guess it goes back. So where were we? It had to have been at that golf tournament Sunday. At a golf tournament, there's a tent, a vendor tent, and I picked up a candle and it said tomato leaf scent, and I'm thinking, why the heck would anybody smell tomato leaves? So of course I had to take the top off, and it smelled just like tomato leaves. I go over and I stick it under Keith's nose. He said, oh my gosh, that smells like tomatoes. I said, whoever made this scent never went tomato picking and got that all up your arms, the green stuff all up your arms, and then tried to get it off of you. I said, whoever thought this was nice had never lived it.
well, you know, even up until, even after I was married, we'd go, Mother and Granny and I would go and pick tomatoes.
And peas.
And go back to her house because, of course, Granny Cumbie had a big open house. You know, back then they had big open houses. And you actually had the big wash tubs with a fire outside, and that's what you did with can them. You didn't can them on top of the stove like they do now. And like, some people now, Larry's mom had a big canner that she used on top of the stove.
She was
But
very
we boiled, it was boil canning them because you had to boil the
Water bath.
tomatoes. Yeah, you water bath them. There you go, that's the word I'm looking for. You water bath them and
35 minutes.
is that what it is? Oh, okay. Good. I haven't done it in quite a few years.
Well, I'm still canning, and the boys say they know how, and that's the only thing that they really still enjoy because they taste so different than store-bought canned tomatoes. So.
Right. And you did green beans, you did tomatoes.
Oh, we did anything coming in out of the garden.
You didn't have a freezer. Oh my goodness,
If we didn't have refrigeration, we darn sure didn't have a freezer.
We didn't have refrigerators, but that
We
was
had a
big deal.
smokehouse at Hatchingham. Do you remember
We
that?
had one too.
Aunt Mary and Uncle Buck had a smokehouse out there by the old garage.
Right behind the garage, on the outside of it, and it was perfectly good.
Boy, I have a Publix 3/4 of a mile from my house.
Heavens. We thought we were in heaven whenever Winn-Dixie and Publix went in Haines City. Oh my gosh. You didn't.
I've come a long way, baby. Literally.
Yeah. They had Alma
And I have money to go to Publix too, which is, that's a plus too.
We had,
Not a lot of money, but at least I got money to go to Publix.
I can remember, the only thing we had here in Davenport that I can remember, but of course.
Alma's store.
Was Alma and her store. Yeah, she had the store.
And the
there.
penny candy, the counter there in the front, the glass counter that had all the penny candy.
And the thing about the store too was when we were going to school up there, when you got up into the junior high part of it, you could take off at your lunch hour.
And run down to Alma's.
Yeah, go down to Alma's, and well, that was a chance when you could go with your boyfriend, walk down there and come back.
Well, you went through those woods there, that path, that dirt path.
Right,
There must not have been sales tax back then.
You didn't have to buy much. It might have a nickel or a dime or a quarter or whatever, or you might have had a little bit of change in your pocket, but.
Oh, no, you saved that 35 cents, it was your lunch.
That's right.
At the lunchroom, and then you bought it down there.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what you
A
did.
Coke and a baby Ruth, and the baby Ruth was that long.
It wasn't Alma's. You were asking me earlier, talking about Alma's and all, and when and where I met Larry. Well, of course, he went to school up here, and 2 years older than me. And I knew who he was, and when I went to church at the Baptist church, of course, knew who he was. But how we actually met, kind of thing, was my dad he was the coach for the Little League baseball team. And Danny played the league baseball. One thing about they had it there, but my mom got involved with trying to get lights and the bleachers and stuff.
Well, I bet she got it. No one
She did, but she finally talked to Publix. Publix had come in down in Haines
I
City.
bet somebody got tired of her and they finally gave in and gave her whatever she
Oh,
wanted.
yes, they did. They had turned my mom on. She was a ball of fire. But, she worked on getting lights for the ball team, and Ann and I we went with Mother and Daddy. We picked Ann, and Mickey wasn't old enough then, but Ann and I we were going to watch Danny and them play ball. Well, Ann had been a little sweet on Jerry Jones, and so anyway, Jerry and Larry came up to the ballpark and to see the ball game. Jerry actually came to see Ann, and so ended up, he sat on the far side of Ann, and Ann and I are sitting here, and Larry sat down on the other side of me. Well, I didn't know him. I didn't know who he was, and I thought, well, we talked, we went to church, and we saw the ball game and all that.
But Larry was so quiet.
Oh my goodness, he was quiet. He's not that quite that quiet now, but still to some extent. But that's where we actually, after that, he see if he could find an excuse to hang around wherever I was or whatever. And then, of course, at church, we started when going to church, and he'd come sit wherever I was sitting, kind of thing. Yeah, that's how we actually, met and started dating. And then, of course, 66 years later, we're still here.
Wow.
Still here, still together, so
Wow.
the Lord's blessed us all the way around. We've done well.
I think all of us here have been blessed.
Good. Around.
Very much.
Yeah. Well, this has been.
It's
lots
been
of
great
fun.
visiting with you.
Yes, and I don't get to see you often enough now that there's just us. I mean, we've lost so many of the family, so many of the.
It is just me and you, isn't it?
Yeah.
I bet people got bets on which one of us is going first. Out of those two old ladies, I wonder which one was going first.
Oh, goodness.
I bet they got a lottery going.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm, what, 2 years old?
1 year.
1 year old. Yeah, because you were right between. Faye is a year older than I am, and then there was me,
Oh,
and then
boy.
there was Betty. Yeah, those are the three of us, the three of us. So I'm a year older than you are.
Yep.
But, oh, goodness, time does go